Hello, it's Dave Lane from Dutch Tents here again. Today I'm going to showcase you around what I personally consider to be the most beautiful tunnel tent of them all, the Baco 390. I'll also, through the purpose of this video, talk about Baco tents generally, as they are an extremely high quality Dutch brand. And I'm also going to show you through some of the features, the setup and the wider design of this beautiful tent. Before we go any further and go inside, I'm just going to quickly take you around so you can get a better idea of the overall shape. Now, of course, what makes the 390 so interesting is the tail, the back end. We've really got a combination of a classic storm tent, pyramid tent. In fact, if I stood here and just focused on this bit, you'd think you were looking at the back of a pyramid tent, wouldn't you? But of course you're not. De Ward were later to go on and develop this idea with their own range of tunnel tents, but Baco came up with this first and have produced, well, it's a wonderful aerodynamic tent. It's considerably bigger than it looks, because whereas a lot of tunnel tents are quite semicircular, so they're quite tall at the top and not so wide at the sides, this tent's actually quite wide. It's 3.9 meters wide, so it's pretty much almost a 6-berth tent. We've got a very deep external awning here. Loads and loads of cover. Slopes nice so the rain runs off. Yesterday when I set this up, I turned the hose on it. I wanted to make sure that the canvas was really good. So this water has just been sat here all night. And as you can see, just beads off, and as we will see when we go inside, it's completely waterproof. Very quickly, just to focus in on a couple of bird poo stains. These will clean off, they'll fade and they'll clean off quite quickly. Other than that, the canvas is astonishingly clean. There are no stains or marks, which is probably due to the fact that this tent has only been used for 10 weeks, so it's really little used. Right, let's have a little look inside. And as we find with tents that have zipped in ground sheets, as this one does, the front doors wall are able to be fully opened. So just for the film, I'm going to open up the right hand side, but this left one, this opens fully up as well. You can see tie tabs, so you can completely open up the front of the tent in nice weather. So before we put the inner tent in, just wanted to give you a bit of a guided tour of the inside. So we have loop there and one there inside, just 2 internal frames. And then we have crossbar either side, keeping those frames apart and giving even more rigidity. Velcro covers attach the poles to the tent, so those ones aren't in, but that one is, just so you can see how it works. And what all this creates is something really quite rigid. That's the roof drumming. One of the problems with tunnel tents is most designs have an exoskeleton, external frame. So outwells, for example, you put the frame on the outside, so the tent then becomes suspended. With all pole tents, from ridge tents to pyramid tents, one of the real advantages in terms of strength and structure is the fact that you have 2 opposing forces. You have the king pole, or the main poles, pushing the canvas upwards, and then you have the guy up to the bottom pulling it down tight. So on a good pitched pyramid tent, you'll tend to be able to get a good drum, particularly on things like the wards and Randstads. But on internal framed tunnel tents, so most Esvos and the wards and Bacos, you're able to use the frame as a tensioner, so you're able to get the canvas taut, which adds again a hell of a lot of structural strength in terms of wind and rain. So this tent, as with all Bacos actually, are extremely storm resistant, very, very strong in rough weather, as is this. Lots of pegging points, lots of great strength and structure, really, really good high quality 10 canvas. I don't think this is 300, I think this is 320, but don't quote me on that. If you look on the Baco website, they may say a little bit more. It's full canvas, so the green sections there and the top sections. On other Baco tunnel tents, sometimes this top roof section is made from 10K's all season material, which isn't canvas at all. It's actually a PU coated polyester. It's very strong and it's very waterproof, but it isn't full canvas. This is full canvas. The only time we move away from canvas is when we go down to the skirts at the bottom, which is PVC, and then we have the traditional, very Dutch traditional, heavy grade PVC ground sheet. The back, we've got some vents, and you can see the zippers, real heavy gauge steel YKK zippers. They were really big on this actually. Okay, let's pop in the inner tent and we can show you what size that is. Before we install it, let's have a quick look at it. So the inner tent has its own thick, heavy-duty ground sheet. We then have a really nice polycotton inner. It's quite nice, thick material that. I think it would have quite a bit of use value in terms of keeping you a bit warmer at night. Okay, so let's pop this in now. So the inner tent is a lovely affair. To start with, it connects the back of the tent, and then it hangs from loops sewn in to the main tent with these extra strong small bungee cords. What it creates is two really large a single large 4-berth tent divided into 2 bedrooms, and from there we're left with a substantial living space, deeper than most pyramid tents actually. I'm trying to think of what pyramid tent might have a deeper living area than this. Possibly an albatross or a Randstad beaver, maybe of the Vergroot Silvermew from the ward. This is a very, very big space. Table and chairs for 4 people in there, absolutely no problem, or even more actually. I think if you left the inner tent out, you'd comfortably sleep 6 people in here on air mattresses side by side. I think with the inner tent in, that space is going to be a little bit more restricted down to the 4-berth that it should be. But for a 4-berth tent, this is an absolute whopper. Standing head height, I'm 5'9", and I've got 3 good inches between me and the roof at the lowest part. Up by the door, again we're going right up to, I think, probably 1.8. Sloping down the porch there, probably going down to about 1.7. Plenty of headroom, unless of course you're really tall. Okay, let's have a little look inside the inner. So you can see that you are going to get a double airbed in there comfortably and with room to spare. In fact, you know, I think you could get 3 kids in there. 3 smaller sleep mats. Yeah, you could. I'll bring a chair in for scale, so you can get an idea of the video. So there's a normal standard garden chair. You can see the space is quite big. The inner tent has a separator, and interestingly the separator has its own zip, so you can zip the kids in at night. Then we have a second door for the second bedroom, and you won't be at all surprised to note that looks remarkably like the first. The inner tent condition is really good. There's no damage, holes, tears. There's no nasty stains. It is absolutely beautiful. This tent was actually used. I acquired it from a couple in The Hague. Absolute typical stereotyped story. They got it as a family camp tent. They were later married, and I think the wife had a younger son and daughter, so they bought the tent. I think they only went family camping a couple of times, and then the parents went off, and after a while they decided that it was just too big for them, so they've acquired themselves a nice little Deward Papagaduka, or puffin, so they tell me, and they've let me have this. So as I've already said, the condition of this tent is sublime. It's absolutely pristine. At 10 weeks old, there's no real sun fading at all. There's absolutely no damage, except one thing on the ground sheet lug that I'm going to show you in a minute. In fact, you know what, let's deal with that issue now. So on the ground sheet, we have a corner lug on the outside for pegging down. It's missing. Can you see that sort of semicircle of light? That's where a lug should be. As you appreciate though, once you have the poles in place, on this side it is pegged down. It doesn't really make a great deal of difference because you've got that frame right in that corner. So I think actually if I was to take the peg out of this side, it would have absolutely no difference. Typically, if I come across a snapped lug, I would cut the lug out and I would put a new lug with patch on from the inside. You can buy them from Esvo specifically for this. Glue it on from the inside, very strong, but on this one I don't think a repair is necessary. It would be a shame to glue a patch on the inside of this beautiful ground sheet just for the sake of a lug that just isn't necessary. So I'm going to leave it. Apart from that, this tent is absolutely unmarked and undamaged. It is sublime. I have to confess I've been hankering after a Baco 390 for years, ever since I first saw photographs of them, because they're so beautiful. And although I knew I would be selling this on because again it's too big for me and my wife and Whippet to go camping in, it is an absolute sheer joy just to actually own one and to be able to touch one. So Bacos generally, they're better known in this country for the pyramid tents that they make. Predominantly a twin pole design that, for those of you who may be familiar with Cabanon's Martinique or Mont Blanc pyramid tents, the two polars, they look very much like that. In fact, I think the Cabanons were originally based on the Bacos. Then they do a single pole 340, which is a lovely pyramid tent, but their specialist is tunnel tents. They're still in business, and they still make some of the best and most expensive tunnel tents you can buy. A new Baco 400, which is the closest to this, I think are probably now over 2,300 euros. So in sterling, it's about 1,900 quid. And this new would be in that range as well. And even though it is little used and in immaculate condition, when I do put this onto my Facebook page, it won't be a price anywhere close to that. It isn't going to be cheap, but it is going to represent a really good value tent. These things will last absolute years. Let's show you some of the points. So as I've already mentioned, very heavy grade 10K canvas attached to a strong PVC lower. The pegging points, you can see they're sewn in, just as the Wall and Randstad do for their ground sheets. Just look at the stitching on that. How often do you see triple stitching? And again, incredibly strong, well put together, well stitched. At the tail, the storm tail at the back, it's edged in PVC again. Again, the lugs heavily sewn to the tent, so they're not going to snap off. This attention to detail is focused in on many other things. So the door flap here, we have the zip there. You pull this flap over here, and this can peg down, and you've got a flat area going straight into the tent, where your zip isn't going to be kicked and knocked and damaged. Very good thinking. The poles have their own little socks to locate them into. The tabs for locating the inner tent, again sewn in, heavily sewn in. These strong ties to tie it in. But interestingly, notice the frame. Square section, boxed section. Not oval tube, that is a little bit more flexy, but boxed section tube that isn't. For those of you who know anything about motorbikes, you'll note that modern sports bikes have large, what they call box section rear swinging arms to attach the wheel to the bike. So box section is very inflexible in comparison to tube or oval section. So it's a lot stronger pound for pound. This is aluminium, and it's as strong as it gets. I don't know if I could do a pull-up from one of these, partly because I don't think I could do a pull-up, but if I could, I suspect it would take the weight. These are lighter weight alloy poles with an adjuster there. They locate into, again, specific lugs there attached for this. It's ever so clever. Can you see the smaller section? This is so, if I back this off, they thought of everything here. That now slides, but if I want to be able to get that out, I need to disconnect that in order that I can bend that down and take out the roof bar. And to repeat the process, put it in. I then reconnect, and I then tension the slider again. So I've now got a strong pole. How clever. Okay, so I think I've covered everything on this. If you're interested, drop me a line. If you're looking for a tent that is stylish, that is exceptionally rare in the UK, there really won't be many of these, that will sleep you and your family comfortably wherever you will decide to pitch it. As I said, these are immensely storm resistant. Then this is the tent for you. With just 10 weeks on the clock, I would expect this to comfortably do another 40 to 50 of those. 40 to 50 weeks. So I would realistically think you've probably got about 20 to 30 years use out of this if you look after it. Don't allow the kids to get any blowing bubbles on it. It might need waterproofing sometime in the 2030s, but apart from that, it's absolutely pristine. I didn't mention the windows. As you can see, we've got windows either side there with storm flaps on the inside. I won't show you those now. I'm sure you know how they all work. Most tents have, a lot of tents have them. So okay, if this is for you, drop me a line. Thanks very much for watching.